So imagine this for a second. You wake up one day and bam, we've lost our main eyes on the planet. I don't just mean like a few fuzzy pictures. I mean the really crucial continuous streams of data. The stuff telling us about our atmosphere, our climate, even where wildfires are popping up. It's information we kind of take for granted now, right? But what if it just stopped? Our deep dive today looks into a situation that a lot of people are calling really critical, maybe even unprecedented. According to sources inside and outside NASA, we're talking reports from CNN, also referencing NPR. NASA is actually planning right now to decommission some premier climate monitoring satellite missions. And this could happen as early as October. These aren't just any satellites, you know. They're absolutely vital for understanding our changing planet. So we're going to unpack what these missions do, why they might be on the chopping block all of a sudden, and what losing them could actually mean for everyone globally.
Yeah, and what's really striking here is just how unusual this whole thing is. I mean, we're potentially talking about deliberately abandoning, maybe even destroying perfectly good multi-million-dollar satellites.
Yeah.
This isn't the usual end-of-life thing where, the instruments just naturally wear out. And if you step back and look at the bigger picture, it could have some pretty profound long-term implications for science collaboration globally, for how we keep tabs on the planet's health continuously.
That capability, that sort of unique viewpoint they give us, it really underscores the snakes, doesn't it? So our mission for you, our listener, is to give you the essential info, the key nuggets on this story as it unfolds. By the end of this deep dive, you should be pretty well informed on why this matters and, well, what's really at stake here. All right, so let's get into the specifics then. Which missions exactly are we talking about? The ones facing these proposed cuts, and what makes them so vital?
Well, the cuts themselves, they're part of President Trump's budget proposal for the fiscal year 2026. That starts this October.
Yeah.
And among the biggest potential casualties are the greenhouse gas monitoring missions. You might know them as the Orbiting Carbon Observatory, or OCO. I'm talking OCO2, that's a standalone satellite, and OCO3, which is actually mounted on the International Space Station. These OCO missions, they're incredibly specialized. They measure very precisely the exact composition of the atmosphere, specifically looking for sources of climate pollution. Scientists told CNN they're particularly good for tracking, fossil fuel emissions, but also emissions related to ecosystems. But it's not just pollution. They also help monitor plant productivity. That's pretty critical for agriculture and also for researchers looking at things like forest loss.
Okay. And it's not just the OCO missions, right? Are there other important instruments also potentially getting cut?
That's right. Yeah, beyond OCO, there are others at risk. There's the Aqua satellite, which has been up there a long time. It carries this high-resolution Earth imager called MODIS. That's used for all sorts of things, like detecting wildfires almost in real time, worldwide. Also potentially in danger are the Terra and Aura missions. Both do really significant climate science work. And even some planned satellites, ones that were supposed to measure things like solar radiation, heavy rain, clouds, very precisely. It's a pretty broad sweep across critical Earth science monitoring.
Wow. Okay, so that really raises the big question then. Why? Why are these missions, which sound fully functional and crucial, facing the axe right now? What's the official reason? And what are scientists saying maybe off the record?
So the administration's stated goal is, well, pretty straightforward. Cutting costs within NASA's Earth science budget. Simple as that, they say. However, many scientists involved directly with these projects, they tend to see a different pattern, something they often describe as, well, anti-climate science. What's particularly unusual here, and maybe a bit concerning to some, is that Congress is actually still considering Trump's budget request. They could reject these cuts. But NASA seems to be proceeding as if the White House plan is already a done deal, this sort of preemptive action. That's what has a lot of people in the scientific community quite worried.
Right. That makes it even stranger. I saw David Crisp, who used to be a NASA scientist, worked on OCO. He confirmed this decommissioning planning is happening. And other sources, too, like a current NASA employee, confirmed it, mentioned NASA calls this final stage Phase F. But the thing that's really baffling, especially about OCO2, they might destroy it. Even though it apparently has enough fuel to keep going until maybe 2040, that just doesn't sound like standard procedure, does it? Shutting off working satellites, these incredibly expensive assets, without some kind of, major review. Why turn off something that's working perfectly well?
Exactly. That's the core of it. Anna McCulloch, she's a climate researcher who works with this kind of data. She put it really well. She said something like, as long as these instruments are producing high-quality data, it's essentially unheard of to decommission the satellites because keeping them going is so cheap compared to building them and launching them in the first place. I mean, imagine having this highly specialized, multi-million-dollar tool still working perfectly, years of life left. And the decision is just to flick the off switch. It sounds, well, almost unthinkable in most other fields, right? But that seems to be what's on the table for OCO2. And what's more, she really emphasized these aren't just important for the U.S. The OCO missions, she said, have been the most impactful missions in the space globally, period. Okay. Other countries actually rely on this data, so the ripples go way beyond U.S. borders.
Okay, so let's follow that thread. If these missions are lost, shut down early, what does that actually mean for us? What are the practical consequences, like driving blind, as you suggested?
Yeah, that's really the heart of the bigger worry here. Ben Poulter, he's with Spark Climate Solutions now, but used to be at NASA, he painted a pretty stark picture. Losing the OCO missions ahead of schedule would absolutely hurt U.S. leadership in climate science, no question. And critically, it would create this multi-year gap in space-based measurements of climate pollution, a real blind spot. As Poulter put it, losing these satellites prematurely gives away the leadership to Europe and to China in terms of monitoring CO2. So it's not just a line item in a budget. It feels more like a strategic step back from global climate leadership. You're basically handing over vital data collection, scientific authority to other nations, and potentially creating this irreversible blind spot in how we understand what's happening to the planet.
It sounds pretty dire. But are there any, lifelines, any possibilities being discussed to maybe save these carbon observatory missions at least? What are the potential paths forward, even if they seem like long shots right now?
Well, there are at least two main possibilities being floated. The first, and maybe the most direct, involves Congress. Lawmakers could basically reject Trump's budget proposal for this specific area. They could make sure NASA gets the funding needed to keep things going, maintain this sort of status quo for U.S. climate and Earth science. Of course, the president would still have to sign off on that bill.
Okay, Congress is one route. And what's the second idea being explored?
The second possibility is kind of interesting. It involves setting up a public-private partnership. So this could mean maybe a philanthropic group or perhaps a very wealthy individual or even a university stepping in to cover the costs of keeping the instruments running and processing all that data. NASA's apparently already put out a call for partners for OCO3, the one on the space station. And a similar call for OCO2 might be coming soon. It's definitely a very unusual way to handle such critical ongoing science missions.
Right. There's definitely the sense of a scramble, as some put it, to figure something out before the plug gets pulled later this year. But as Anna Mikulak also pointed out, bringing in the private sector, that could have its own issues, right? Maybe potentially reducing NASA's key role in providing that sort of unbiased baseline Earth observation data. And the timeline is just incredibly tight. NASA has, less than 2 months, basically, to find a way to keep these going?
Yeah, the clock is definitely ticking. It's a very short window.
So wrapping this up then, what does this all mean for us? When these vital streams of global data are facing such an uncertain future, you've got these proposed cuts, whether you see them as just cost-cutting or maybe part of this pattern against climate science that some scientists perceive, they carry huge weight either way. We're looking at potentially a multi-year gap in really important climate pollution data from space, and almost certainly a shift in global leadership in this science area, moving towards Europe and China.
Exactly. And this really brings up a crucial question, something for you, the listener, to maybe think about. What is the long-term value of maintaining this kind of continuous global scientific data, especially when you weigh it against the, frankly, huge initial investment it took to get these missions up there in the first place? And maybe more broadly, what do decisions like this, potentially shutting down working vital instruments, signify about our collective approach, our approach to monitoring our own planet, and really our understanding of Earth's future?